Okay, welcome to this video that I'm currently putting together for the IELTS step-by-step mastering writing course, which should be out within the next 7 days. Hopefully next weekend it will be available. And I thought it would be a good idea to focus on a little bit of advanced grammar for the IELTS writing that you will be expected to use to make sure you've got a 7 or 7.5 and above. And this particular thing that we'll be focusing on is something called gerund phrases. And I'm sure for some of you, you've pretty lost what on earth is a gerund phrase. So there's a great opportunity for me to teach not only the students who are on the Mastering Writing course, but also my students on YouTube itself. Okay, so let's start with what are gerund phrases. Okay, so there's a poor student down here on the left and his teacher on the right trying to explain. So he starts off with, so what's a gerund first? And it's a very good question. If you know what a gerund is, that's great. If you don't, this is a chance for you to focus very carefully. So basically a gerund is a verb that when you add ing to it, it takes on the properties of a noun. And if I say take on a property of something, it means it sort of becomes a noun in a way. It's not a noun, but it behaves like a noun. It has the similar qualities or properties of a noun. Now, some of you might go, oh, okay, wait, we need to go back a bit. What's a verb and what's a noun? So let's just quickly look at that. So a verb is a word that describes an action or a state. So an example could be eat, or play, cook, run, swim, laugh. All of these are action verbs. Or a state, a verb that describes a state, like love. I love warm weather. The state of my emotion at this moment is enjoyment of warm weather. Okay. And the other thing that we need to just double check is a noun. So a noun is a word, that describes a thing such as a table, a chair, a teacher, or something abstract like the word knowledge. Okay, and here's some abstract nouns: adventure, luck, friendship, etc. Okay. Now that we've cleared up with what these things are, maybe we can go back. So let's double check. What's a gerund? A gerund is, a verb plus ing that has the properties of a noun. So the student says, okay, so cooking is a gerund. Yes, it looks like a gerund, but be careful. So let's just have a look at this. The teacher says, yeah, but not this sentence, I'm cooking. Because that's talking about something that I'm doing right now, and it has the verb be in it. So I am cooking, the verb be is there, therefore this is not a gerund, it's just the present continuous or present progressive grammar of the English language. It means I'm doing something at this moment in time. Okay, but cooking is fun. Yes, this is a gerund because cooking is functioning as something called the subject. Okay, and then over here is a verb, and I'll explain later why a gerund usually is, well, yeah, most of the time functions as a subject, okay, of a sentence. All right, let's clear that and let's carry on. So now he wants to know, what is a gerund phrase? Okay, because he now understands what a gerund is, but what's a gerund phrase? Well, let's have a look at this. The above sentence, cooking is fun, as I said, that's the subject, cooking. Let's move that out the way. That's the subject, cooking, and there's the verb. And fun is just explaining something, so that's a complement, but it's nothing. We don't have to worry about what fun does at the moment. So this is a full sentence, because full sentences in English must have a subject and a verb, minimum. Subject plus verb. So let's take, for example, stand. I stand is an acceptable sentence. If someone asks me, oh, what do you do when you're going to work and you have to take the bus and everyone's take in all the seats? Well, my answer is I stand. Okay, a perfectly acceptable English sentence. So that is a full sentence, a complete idea. Okay, but a phrase is not a complete idea. It either doesn't have a subject or it doesn't have a main verb. Okay, so let's see. The student says, so cooking fish is a phrase, it's a gerund phrase, and the teacher smiling. My student, you have understood exactly. Cooking fish, there's no main verb here. Cooking is not a verb anymore, it's become a gerund, and remember, gerund is now a type of noun. So cooking fish is a phrase, and yes, it is a gerund phrase because there is an ing over here. So cooking fish, cooking oily fish, cooking fresh oily fish, cooking fresh oily fish from the sea, all of that, all of those are examples of a gerund phrase, starting with cooking and explaining what type of fish it is, but there is no main verb here. Okay. All right, let's have a look at why gerund phrases are important. Okay. First of all, probably the most important, is that if you know how to use them, it makes it much easier to express your ideas. Okay, it's like advanced coding. If you know these advanced bits, your coding becomes a lot easier. Same thing. The second thing, equally important in the exam context, is that you're going to get a higher mark in the exam if you know how to use such advanced grammar like the gerund phrases. Okay, something that's going to come up in the course, if you do the course or if you're on the course already, is something called topic sentences. And topic sentences are sentences that typically start a paragraph. Certainly they start the introduction of your whole essay when you're doing task 2 of the IELTS exam. So the topic sentences are very important because they introduce the idea of the paragraph before you continue giving evidence or explanations or examples. So let's take this as an example here. Moving to a large city can have both positive and negative aspects, and making the most of that situation can be difficult if you're not familiar with the surroundings. Notice both times here there's a perfectly good topic sentence to start your essay, at least the main body of your essay, the first paragraph of your essay, if your essay is about moving to a big city. And there you can see there's the gerund. Over here as well, there's 2 gerunds. And this as well as this makes it into a phrase. Okay, moving to a large city, that's the gerund phrase. Making the most of the situation, that's a gerund phrase. And then you can see here, can have, that's the main verb here, and can be, main verb. Okay, and that now makes it into a sentence. Moving to a large city, verb, both positive and negative aspects. I can stop the sentence here, and that is a perfectly good sentence. Moving to a large city can have both positive and negative aspects. Okay, but there we have the gerund phrase, and it's sitting there helping to create this topic sentence because it is functioning as one very big subject. Subject of a sentence, remember English, S, V, and sometimes O for object. Subject, verb, object. At least in English and most European languages, that's the order of the grammar. So there's the subject, moving to a large city, verb, can have, and then complement, in this case, both positive and negative aspects. Okay. I think that's all I want to talk about here right now. When can I use them? Okay, so as I said before in the topic sentences, gerund phrases are usually used as subjects of a sentence. So remember S, V, and then sometimes O. The gerund phrase functions as the subject. So it's fun to cook. It more commonly is written like this. Cooking is fun. Subject. In this case, it's just a single gerund, not a whole phrase. But cooking is fun. There's the verb, and then the complement here. So cooking for friends is fun. Cooking on a Friday afternoon or evening is fun, okay, but that still functions as a subject of the sentence. Now, if you look over here, you could write it this way. You could write it with the if clause. If you want to de-stress, comma, listen to classical music. But more commonly, people would say listening to classical music can help you to de-stress. When I say more common, let's say more typical of an IELTS style essay. Topic sentence, certainly a topic sentence. So listening to classical music can help you to de-stress. Imagine that the topic of this essay is how music can help people to improve, okay, or improve their lives. Okay, and this could be the start of one of your paragraphs talking about how music can help you to get on with your life and cope. COPE, survive. Okay, get on and survive with your life. Now, over here, this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. Can I use gerund phrases as objects of a sentence? Okay, now it becomes a little bit more tricky. So let's have a look at these two sentences. We try and put them together. We have to stay at home. Many people dislike this. Now this word refers back to the whole idea. The word this refers to the whole idea. And I've had to split the two sentences up to make it possible. Is there a way to say this in a single sentence using a gerund phrase? And the answer is yes, you can. Okay, let's have a look at that. All I have to do is change the main verb. Now, some people will say, hang on, that's the main verb and this is auxiliary. Not with have to. Have to is a special one. Okay, so have to becomes the main verb in this case. So I change the main verb into the ing form, and then I have a perfectly good gerund phrase used to complete this sentence. There's the verb, dislike, not like. So many people dislike, and then all of that becomes the object of the sentence. Okay. And then many people, obviously, is the subject. Okay. The thing is that not all verbs allow you to do this. You can't do any verb and put an ing on a following verb and then make it into a gerund phrase. It's not possible. So what you need to do is just learn which verbs allow you to do this. So let's have a look at the most common verbs that come up in the IELTS, at least. These are typical IELTS style verbs. Okay, so like, dislike, we've just seen, enjoy, and do not mind. They're sort of essentially lumped into a single grouping, as you'll notice here, in terms of general meaning. So like, dislike, enjoy, don't mind. It's a single group. Start, continue, carry on, finish, practice. Okay, so you could start doing the test, continue doing the test, carry on doing the test, finish doing the test, practice doing the test. Okay, and all of them allow you to use the ing form of the verb do. Okay, risk, face, consider, tolerate, resent, reject, and appreciate. Resent maybe is a new word for you, and I'll put it up there for you to see how we use it. Deny something, mention something, delay, avoid, imagine, and involve. Okay, all of these allow you to use gerund phrases as objects in your sentences. Okay, there's a little star here. Okay, I just want to point something out. The gerund form of the verb always follows a preposition. Some of you might say, oh, hang on, we've done verbs and nouns. What's this new word, preposition? Okay, so on is a preposition, in is a preposition, with is a preposition, of, the idea of, is a very common preposition in IELTS. The idea of doing the exam bothers me. The idea of taking the exam bothers me. So this preposition, it always follows a gerund form. So in, on, with, of, from, and there's a few others. Down here you can see from, there it is, apart from something. And this word despite, it'll come up in the, I spend a lot of time on this word. in the mastering writing course, simply because it's a very useful word to know. And despite is a type of preposition, it's very typical to be found in academic writing. So you'll be looking at this in more detail later in this video, as well as in the course if you do end up doing it. Okay, so the preposition on, in, with, of, and from always have the verb ing form after them. And so that is the reason why carry on over here, it's this word itself that's giving us the chance to use gerund phrases as an object. So I think that's all I want to say. Just one, yeah, so remember, like doing something, dislike doing, but remember I can also, because gerunds are a bit like nouns now, remember I can add things after this nouns as well. I like Disneyland. Okay, so just because I'm saying these verbs only take gerund phrases, well, it's not the case. They don't only take gerund phrases. They can take anything that functions like a noun or noun phrase. Okay, and gerund phrases and noun phrases are very similar in their structure. So I like Disneyland. I like going to Disneyland. I like Disneyland in the summer. I like it. I like this. All of these can do it. The exception of carry on. Carry on. I don't say carry on this. Okay, that's a little special one, and that's why it's got a little star around it. Okay, but yeah, all of these can take this, it, etc. It can take a noun phrase, Disneyland or Disneyland in summer, and of course it can take the gerund phrase, doing a dance. Okay, I don't know, I just thought that up. Okay, so any of those are possible after these words, except carry on, which is a special one. Okay, now let's go on to and do, if you want, by the way, there's going to be a list of these verbs in the comment section of this video, so you are able to take a copy of it. You don't have to screenshot this or anything. Okay, right, let's go on to some examples. Now these examples are using gerund phrases as objects of the sentence. Okay, there's lots of examples of gerund phrases being used as subjects online, but these are the ones that I'm focusing on, the objects of the sentence. So after these special verbs like or dislike. Okay, so many people dislike being forced to stay at home. This is an example of a passive voice. There's another thing that you'll be studying on in the course. So the police force people to stay at home. Talking about the COVID-19 situation at the moment. But if I want to make it passive, I start with the object of the active sentence, so people, and then if you remember the passive voice, are forced, so that's be plus verb number 3. Okay, people are forced to stay at home. People don't like this, so if I say people don't like that, I can say many people dislike. The are becomes the gerund form. Many people dislike being forced to stay at home. Okay, so a little bit of, I mean, that's double points there. If you can use the passive voice plus this gerund form, it would really show off your high level of English in the IELTS Task 2 writing. Have a look at this one. By continually ignoring advice from experts, we risk making the current situation worse. Okay. And the last one here, poverty is a problem in many areas of the world, and it's important to consider implementing, putting into place universal basic income. Everyone would get a basic form of money coming into their, whether they're wealthy or not. It's not just for people who don't have a job. That's basically universal basic income. Okay, so these the use of these gerund phrases as objects after these verbs here shows off, as I said, your high level of English. But what you do need to do is remember which of those verbs allow you to do this. There's not that many, you just need to remember them. There's no hard and fast rule about which verbs allow you to do this. You just need to remember that list that I gave you. And as I said, they're also in the comment section. All right, now let's just have a look at gerund phrases with prepositions. Okay, so here we go. Let's use it. Let's look at one without any gerund phrases. Vietnam is a relatively poor nation, but it was able to significantly limit the number of COVID-19 cases. Okay, now this is a compound sentence. Compound sentences are fine, there's no problem with them, but they really don't show off your level of English. You need to make complex sentences. And what you do is use this. Okay, so there's a preposition, this special one we already spoke about, called despite, and it basically, this sentence means the same as this, except this second sentence is much more advanced and shows off your higher level of English. So despite being, there's the gerund, despite being a relatively poor nation, it's the gerund phrase, GP. Despite being a relatively poor nation, comma, Vietnam was able to significantly limit the number of COVID-19 cases. So perfectly grammatically acceptable here, perfectly grammatically acceptable here, except you're going to get lots more ticks, or at least subjective nods and subjective happiness from the examiner if he sees this type of writing. Similarly, we can have a look at this here. Many governments ignored early warnings from experts, and basic compound sentence with and were also, we could put they here, but we don't need to repeat the sentence, the subject. And they were also slow to act when they finally did start to listen. Okay. Now let's look at a way to make this a lot more advanced and complex. Apart from ignoring early warnings from experts, many governments, there's a very important comma here, many governments were also slow to act when they finally did start to listen. Okay, again, the same thing, perfectly grammatically acceptable, but here it's going to give you a lot more, make a better impression on the examiner. Don't forget, with apart from and with despite, you must use the comma here. And apart from has this special word. It's not always there, but it's a good idea to keep it because it's just sounds right. So apart from this, comma, something, something, also did something, something. Okay. Now this is just the final thing I want to talk about. For those of you who would like to use these words, despite and apart from, but find these gerund phrases still a bit difficult to understand, there are ways of avoiding the gerund phrase. So let's just have a look at this. What we can do is use the fact that. Sometimes we can use these ones as well, 1, 2, and 3, but the fact that is the most common way to do this. So the ones we've been looking at already in the previous slide were these ones here. But maybe your level of, maybe you've got the exam coming up this weekend or next weekend and you're just not getting it. You don't understand how to make this. What we can do is just use the fact that. Okay, so if you want to use this word despite, you can say despite the fact that, and then everything else from this basic English stays the same. Despite the fact that Vietnam is a relatively poor nation, comma, but because you're using despite, you just take away the word but. So you see there's no but here. It was just continues. Despite the fact that Vietnam is a relatively poor nation, it was able to significantly limit. Okay, so you can use that word. It also shows off a high level of grammar, and the fact that that is also making it into a complex sentence. So it's still very good, even though you're not necessarily using the gerund phrase that will still make a good impression on the examiner. Same thing here. We looked at these two sentences as the previous slide, but if you want to use apart from and you're not sure how to work this, then by all means go ahead, use the fact that, and the same thing. Many governments ignored early warning signs from experts, comma, everything stays the same, there's the comma. You just need to take away and, because you've got apart from, and then they were also slow to act when they finally did start to listen. Okay, and remember also needs to stay there. So feel free to use the fact that, or the idea that, or the possibility that. It depends on the essential meaning of the sentence. Feel free to use them, and avoid using the gerund phrase if you're not really sure or very confident how to use it, because it still shows off your complex sentences. Okay, now I've used the fact that and these ones here with despite and apart from simply because it's so common to see them used with these two prepositions. But remember, going back to that list of verbs that we've already talked about, the verbs that allow you to use a gerund phrase after them, there are some of them that do allow this. So take, for example, the word regret. I feel sorry. I wish I could change it. So regret, I feel sorry for something I did in the past. And I can use the fact that, and then the sentence itself is very basic. I regret the fact that I did not take a photograph. I did not take a photograph is very basic, but because I'm using the word that, I'm making it into a complex sentence. However, if you want to try and make it even more advanced, you can say, I regret not taking a photo. Now, I put this in yellow because some of you might have wanted to make the negative of the gerund phrase. To make a gerund phrase negative, you simply put not at just before the ing form of the verb, okay, or the gerund. All right. If you have any questions, please let me know down in the comment section of this video, and bear in mind as well, please, that the IELTS step-by-step combo course, the Mastering Reading and Mastering Listening course, is still at a massive discount from the quarantine discount that I set up. 40 days of huge discounts, but it's coming up in 5 days time. That's going to be the end of it. So next week, Tuesday night, the price of the combo course goes up again back to its maximum. So take full advantage of these 5 days. Okay, and the link to that course is also down in the comments section of this video. Okay, thanks very much everyone for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.